Good evening, everybody. This is my first time presenting, so I hope I have been warned not to talk too much. So without further ado, you know what this webinar is about non-invasive electrical stimulation is yet another alternative for Cpap, which of course, you know, we do is the gold standard treatment, but there are many people who struggle and many people who could look at other approaches. So we're going to start off with the inventor, which is Jörg-Steier, Professor-Jörg-Steier, sorry. Now he's the medical, what are you? Advisor.
He's the brains.
Medical advisor of our charity, but obviously holds a very important role at Guy's and St Thomas, King's College, where he's a respiratory consultant with lots and lots of patients, and I'm one of them actually. You also have a chair of the British Sleep Society, so there is no end to this man's workload. He does it all with a smile on his face. So over to you to explain. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the invite, Kath. And just let me know, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So as you already mentioned, the inventor, this is my conflict of interest slide in the context of what we're going to talk about tonight, with transcutaneous electrical stimulation to be really mentioned here, that I'm the named inventor for a patent which is between King's College London and Guy's St Thomas as my employers, and this is the most relevant potential conflict of interest. So what we're going to talk about, thanks for having me back, Kath, by the way, and I couldn't believe it when you gave the introduction. We've met a decade ago with the work with the British Sleep Society,
yes.
the British Lung Foundation.
Lung Foundation, yeah.
And about the sleep apnea awareness campaign, and
yes.
ever since we didn't let go. So
tonight,
no. Tonight we're going to talk about the Tesla program, transcutaneous electrical stimulation in sleep apnea, and many of you may have heard about this in the last couple of years. We've been working on this for a while. Many of you will have also already helped us with the current ongoing research trial that's now hopefully coming to an end in the autumn. And so where are we now? Just a short reminder. I know in this forum you will all know about sleep apnea and that it's common. This is here unto the pandemic, the most quoted paper in the world of respiratory medicine in the Lancet Respiratory, published in 2019 by Adam Benjafield, estimating that roughly 1 billion people on this planet have symptomatic obstructive sleep apnea. So this is common, and you hold your breath repeatedly at night. And eventually, because the body thinks it's asphyxiating, it wakes up, and this happens again and again and again. And this causes a lot of distress. The point of obstruction is typically the upper airway, as marked here in this little picture, and it's fairly common with certain hotspots in the UK, as pointed out by this map. It's associated not only with symptoms like sleepiness. When you wake up, you had unrefreshing sleep, or you might have headaches. It's also associated with other problems like significant cardiovascular risk. It's associated with hypertension. Only yesterday, the American Heart Association actually took sleep as the major recommendation into their essential life recommendation, that you need to have a proper and healthy sleep in order to have a good cardiovascular health. So it's associated with diabetes, and that's possibly due to the link with the obesity and with other severe outcomes like stroke. It's prevalent. I said the 1 billion across the planet, and the prevalence is rising in line with the obesity. We are now talking about roughly 1 in 10 of middle-aged men in the UK, and maybe 1 in 30 middle-aged women who have symptomatic sleep apnea. Now we've got a very good treatment. Sleep apnea can be treated with Cpap therapy. And in anyone who's got Cpap therapy where this works, this is a good news here. continuous positive airway pressure therapy, the best level of evidence, the first-line treatment. This is something that me as a respiratory physician, I come across this, and I love to work with it because it works. However, if you're realistic, it might not work in everyone. And that's presumably something that we need to understand. If you actually look into compliance, then after 3 months, only 3/4 of patients really use it sufficiently. And if you look into who that might be, then you can see here that if you're young and maybe female, then your compliance might be after 3 months as low as 50%. And that's just leaving the other 50% who don't use it without really so much of a therapy. Now, this brings up, of course, then the second question. After the first-line therapy fails, what do you offer? And sleep medicine is a relatively young field still. So mandibular advancement devices have now more and more ranked in with the evidence to be maybe possibly second-line therapy when Cpap therapy fails. But we have been doing research on another development, namely the development of the use of electrical stimulation to stimulate these upper airway muscles that relax when you're falling asleep and then lead to the obstruction of the upper airway. This is here where we were in 2011. The ERS, the European Respiratory Society, said, well, it's not really something to recommend at that stage. But since a lot has changed, on the left side of the picture here, maybe more so the focus on the implantable devices, and you will possibly have heard about hypoglossal nerve stimulator implants. We are now doing this as well in the UK. Started in February at Guy's and St. Thomas's with the first devices to implant this. But if you look on the right side, then you see these patches. This is really where we've been at when we started off in 2011, the transcutaneous electrical stimulation of the upper airway dilator muscles. And this is particularly the genioglossus muscle here, pulling the front wall of the pharynx forward whilst you're asleep and keeping the airway open. So just a short run as a reminder through this. This was the initial study published in 2011, and we saw that when we stimulated patients with sleep apnea at night for 10-minute periods, we significantly improved their apneas and hypopneas, here indicated with the AHI, the apnea-hypopnea index, which dropped by 60% roughly from 26 to 10 per hour, and when we turned the device off, it went up again. So not a complete resolution. The apnea-hypopnea index below 5 would be considered being normal, but 10 only ranking in the mild group of sleep apnea severity, and actually a reduction of 60% and then classifying someone as mild. It might not be as good as Cpap, but it's presumably much better than no treatment at all. So from that perspective, it also needs to be considered that all the cardiovascular risks associated with sleep apnea therapy relate to the moderate and severe categories. The Mosaic trial from the Oxford group and others didn't show that mild sleep apnea doesn't have this associated cardiovascular risk. So this is how it looked here on the left. Here, if you look at the flow signal, the second trace from the bottom, then you see the intermittent flat line. That is where you hold your breath for 10 seconds or more, an apnea. And then halfway through the screen, we turned on the stimulation, and towards the right, you see flow continues. There's no further obstruction in this patient that we studied here in this paper, and airflow resumes, snoring improves, work of breathing is lower, and this was how we, in a proof of principle study, showed this is actually something that we can make to work. Others in parallel showed in more sophisticated studies even that patients stayed asleep with this stimulation, because that was, of course, a big stepping stone to get the stimulation right, not to wake the patient. We don't want to wake them because then, yes, they breathe as well, but they do have fragmented sleep, and that's not what we wanted. In the implantable world, then, this was here the landmark paper for the Inspire trial called STAR trial. Inspire device implanted here with a sensor sensing inspiratory activity and a pacer to the distal branch of the hypoglossal nerve, which activates the same muscle that we were after with these patches. Yeah? And they published their data in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2014. And based on these data, where they showed they improved the apnea-hypopnea index from around, again, similar to us, and moderate to severe category, not entirely back to normal, but an index of 7, 6, 7 per hour. So a remarkable improvement. And when they then turned off the device after a year of treatment, they again saw that in those where they turned the device off, the sleep apnea was still there. And in those where they continued to treat, the effect was still present. So based on these data, these implantable devices were actually US FDA approved and have now been implanted in tens of thousands of patients across the globe. We've made a start here in the UK in February. Other devices are now pushing to the market here. This is the Genio device by Nyxoah, where you implant in the midline a little stimulator that reaches to both sides of the hypoglossal nerve. And then at night you put a battery pack on top of the skin, which via induction triggers this stimulator device. So they claim similar results to the implantable Inspire technology that I've just shown, but it's still early days. I think the company comes from Benelux, and we will certainly hear more about what they have to offer. Now, if you ask the patient, that's you, actually, what about treatment for sleep apnea? Then this is here a result that we had on almost 200 patients who were quite adherent to Cpap therapy from our sleep center. We gave them pictures, explained them what these therapies were about, and told them, if you were to choose one, which one would you choose? And so you can see here, even in the highly adherent Cpap therapy, it was roughly a fifth of them would stay on the Cpap. Some would choose mandibular advancement devices on the right. Some of them would choose the hypoglossal nerve stimulator, and some of them, and that was the majority, would choose actually a non-invasive device like Tesla that I'm going to show you now, presuming it works. And that's where we are at. Now, we had to actually then now work on delivering the data. This is here the flow diagram, how we recruited the patients into the initial Tesla trial, which we published in 2016. And that showed that in roughly half of the patients that we recruited, responders, we found a very substantial treatment effect, again, of similar size to what we've seen in the proof of principle study a couple of years earlier. But this year was actually independent of the investigator. The computer turned the stimulation on and kept it running all night long. So the oxygen desaturation index and the apnea-hypopnea index both improving. By now, besides our group, many others have been working on this topic with either the implantable device or with a non-implantable transcutaneous approach. And so we published here the results of a meta-analysis where you see whether the treatment changes an outcome. And for those of you who haven't seen these kind of meta-analyses before, 0 in the middle, if the bars reach 0, then this study says it hasn't really made such a difference for the entire study group. Whilst if it's to one side, and here it's towards the minus side, then it has provided a significant difference. Now, if you do this across all of these studies, then you have suddenly hundreds or thousands of patients included, and you can see that if you pool the data from these studies, the effect size of electrical stimulation sits roughly around an improvement in the apnea-hypopnea index of -25 per hour. And that is maybe more of an effect for the implantable device because you're closer to the organ, and you can apply the current better. And that is maybe slightly less than 25 for the non-invasive approach, but overall a very consistent finding. So there are pros and cons for invasive versus non-invasive approach, and basically it breaks down to costs, which is more in favor maybe of the non-invasive approach, and efficacy, which is slightly in favor maybe of the invasive approach. Yeah, but the side effects certainly with the non-invasive approach also very favorable. We haven't had anything else but local skin irritation possibly. So this was the proof of concept study. We then published the randomized control trial. We are working to understand, also visualize whether this treatment approach works and how we can best refine this for the patient to make it more acceptable to have a TENS machine on your skin at nighttime. These were initial drafts from the patent. Nigel will have seen this repeatedly, and the very early prototype. Yeah, this has then been refined, and by now we're talking about something that Nigel will pick up on, a very neat CE marked approved TENS machine, which is produced here with the name Zeus. And we'll hear more about this by Nigel in a moment. Now, I'm sorry that I'm racing through this, but I want to give you the chance to ask questions, and I'm aware it's already quite late in the evening, so I do not want to waste the time with something that you might have seen before. Now, this is here relatively new, because here you see the Zeus machine, the TENS machine, which includes the hydrogel, the device, and the charger. And this is what you put on in the middle of the night to stimulate in the subglottic area, in the submental area, to keep the airway muscles active and the airway open. So we are now establishing actually in our service an approach where we review, independent of the physicians like myself, individual cases of patients in something that is called a multidisciplinary team meeting. Why? Because we have so far been talking about first-line therapy, Cpap therapy, or mandibular advancement devices, for which we have the evidence and for which we have the guidance and the established pathways. But in the case of now establishing novel therapy, we want to, of course, do the right thing and work with our colleagues and consider the individual phenotype of the patient to apply other solutions. That can be other solutions. What do I mean by that? That can be inclusion in a randomized clinical trial. For example, the Tesla Home trial, where we are now handing out such treatment and the patient uses it for 3 months in the community under controlled conditions so that we are sure we're catching the outcomes and don't let the patient on their own. That can be referral to the ENT department for consideration of the implantable device. That can be referral to the max-fax surgeon to consider other surgical solutions, maxillomandibular advancement surgery. That can be, a review of the entire multidisciplinary team to bring together postural therapy advice, maybe even cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia to cope with a mask. Yeah, we are recruiting the expertise to bring it together and have case discussions where then for the individual subject we find the right way forward. And this is, in my opinion, the way forward to also independently and unbiased provide the patient best possible care in a center, in an academic health sciences center, because eventually we help the patients, but the patients help us to understand, to refine, how to best refine the therapy. So this is just an early outlook, what we're looking at here. Look into the upper airway of several patients on the left with the stimulation off, on the right with the stimulation on. And here you more or less need to believe me that the right side shows, particularly here maybe on the bottom picture, that the upper airway is pulled forward and the airway is more open, but you might see it if you look at the inside here of the vocal cords, because you hardly see the vocal cords. The epiglottis is in the way on the left lower panel and on the right lower panel, you see definitely this kind of V shape of the vocal cords, and the epiglottis further forward, and the tonsils, the tonsilla lingualis also being visible in these recesses there. So we are assessing in the Tesla Home trial, which is coming to an end soon, and hopefully we'll see more about these results, the muscle contraction here with ultrasound, and yes, electrical stimulation can reach that muscle, and yes, the muscle does contract, and as it inserts on the front into the back of the mandible, the lower jaw, when it contracts and pulls, then it doesn't pull the jaw backwards, it will pull the anterior wall, the front wall of the pharynx forward. So these kind of findings are now more or less also reviewed on an international scale, and I had the pleasure to work with the international panel here on the European Respiratory Society guidelines of non-Cpap therapy, which were published end of last year. At the moment, so I showed you in the beginning where we were 2011. It always takes a while and a lot of randomized controlled trials to convince everyone, but they've shifted their advice from should not be recommended to now, however, we suggest that this stimulation should be used as a salvage treatment in patients with symptomatic OSA who cannot be sufficiently treated with positive airway pressure or mandibular advancement device, and with a certain range of body mass indices and apnea-hypopnea indices, because we do now know this is not a treatment for everyone, but even if it only serves half of the people who do not carry on with first-line therapy like Cpap, then this would be another added option to the cascade of treatment decisions that we have to make sure that eventually we get it. So where are we at? We have shown over the last decade that safety and efficacy of electrical stimulation in sleep apnea can be made to work. And this is now not my statement. This is based on data output from randomized controlled trials using A, the STAR trial, the invasive technology, and B, using the transcutaneous technology, the Tesla trial as well. It is absolutely essential to test responders, and this can be done with ultrasound, with endoscopy, with drug-induced sleep endoscopy like ENT surgeons do, and patients can be pre-assessed whether this is actually working for them. Patient and public involvement, like I've shown you, the exercise that we have gone through has now been quoted even by NICE to show, yes, there is an interest. Even if patients are adherent to Cpap therapy, they would like to test sufficient other treatments if they're evidence-based and they can work. That's maybe the emphasis really. Further, this is now part of guidelines. NICE has issued the guidelines on hypoglossal nerve stimulation in 2017, and the ERS, I shortly mentioned it, have reviewed their first non-Cpap therapy guidelines in 2021, and there's more to be heard about this in future, hopefully. For anyone for whom this was now too fast, Vic Veer has got a nice YouTube tutorial of this. So don't worry, you don't need to write this. I understand Kath records all this, so you can presumably look all this up and then just have an YouTube video reviewing all this. And as this is never only just one person, but many working together, here a mention of many of my team members, not the least my PhD supervisor who instilled all these fabulous ideas, Professor John Moxham, who still is kept in the loop long beyond his retirement. So, and with that, I give you now the chance to have a few questions. Thank you. Oh, Kath, I think you are on mute now.
Thank you. The presenter doesn't know what she's doing. No, thank you. That was really, really interesting. And what I absolutely love, I mean, is that you treat people all day. I've been in your hospital as an inpatient, watching people on CPAP and ventilation, and then, but yet here you are knowing that it's still not the treatment for everyone. And if there are other ways, you know, it's you know, it's just good that nowadays we are just looking at other options, the holistic approach really, isn't it? Now there's two questions today that one's at the top here from Alicia. Does this work for UARS? And that actually came through to me earlier as an email from somebody else. So I think UARS patients, for people who don't realise, that's called upper airways resistance syndrome, which is when you don't quite fall into the range of sleep apnea, but you do have the symptom.
Yeah.
People are going to be very keen about this. Yeah.
So UARS, exactly. So basically, if you look at the upper airway obstruction as a spectrum, yeah, if it's wide and open, you don't make any noise. If it then narrows, you start to snore, but still it doesn't wake you. UARS is then the stage between snoring and breath holding, where you have obstructive sleep apnea, where the work of breathing gets so high, you still have the air going in and out, but the work of breathing is so high that it wakes you up. Yeah, that is upper airway resistance syndrome, because it fragments your sleep. Because every time the airway narrows, you need to breathe so hard that it wakes you. So in theory, we haven't got data for this, because UARS, well, on the one hand, it's tricky to diagnose, but on the other hand, the trials we've been running were not really focused on UARS patients. However, having said that, as we observe both snoring and obstruction, we can certainly say that both has improved with electrical stimulation. So we have data from the 2011 study to show that snoring improves with the methodology, so milder airway obstruction. And we have data from the Tesla trial and from the STAR trial to show that the obstruction can be offset, and therefore the airway is wider. So if you consider that UARS sits on the spectrum of airway obstruction, somewhere between snoring and obstructive sleep apnea, then if you think mechanistically that you stimulate the muscles that pull the airway open, then I would hypothesize that UARS patients should benefit to the same degree as sleep apnea patients, which is more of a significant obstruction and often actually a progression. UARS patients maybe later on in life, or when they put on weight, for example, can become obstructive sleep apnea patients. So I would hypothesize that the methodology should also, in the mechanistic sense, be able to get on top of the problem in UARS and improve the problems. Yeah.
That sounds really good, because you know a lot of what we get at the charity is people who don't quite fit that criteria, and yet they're so symptomatic. It's so difficult because not all places will help them. So that's very, very encouraging. And Lou mentioned something that I noticed myself, that on all the diagrams, they are laid on the back. You know, would that help? Is it necessary to lay on your back, where obviously most obstructions are worse? Would it improve the use by laying on your side as well?
No, actually, typically the back position, lying on your back, is the worst you can be in for sleep disorder breathing.
Yeah.
Why is that? Several reasons, but the most remarkable, presumably because the tongue ground is pulled backwards, and the if you think of this picture that I've shown you, the airway is pulled too close. Yeah. So that is less the problem when you're sleeping in lateral position and gravity pulls the lower tongue ground away from the airway, or even best if you're sleeping, instead of supine, you're sleeping prone on your tummy. That is pretty good because the airway is kept open, yeah, due to gravity. Therefore, sleep disorder breathing typically gets worse in supine posture, in if you're on your back. So the method works and often in clinical trials, just as much as in Cpap trials. Doctors like me tell the patient in the sleep lab, can you sleep on your back? Because we want to see in the worst possible position whether it's possible to keep the airway open, to get the pressures right, to get the stimulation right. Now, for home, this is completely irrelevant. If you prefer to sleep on the side, please do so. If you have sleep apnea and you haven't tried it yet, try to sleep on the side or even prone, because it can improve the severity quite remarkably. This methodology of electrical stimulation is certainly as active and as efficient in lateral and prone position as it is in supine position. So from that perspective, it's something that's that shouldn't restrict you, and particularly if you need to think and plan your sleep, you switch your head on, and then you often get into this kind of cycle where you try to optimize and where you develop maybe even insomnia. Yeah, we want you to be as relaxed as possible, and if you prefer to sleep on the side, these kind of treatments certainly allow for that.
Yeah, yeah. I can tell people are getting quite excited here. Somebody here asked about if someone has untreated AHI of 50, but treated with 5, is this something that could be considered? This person has a severe disability which makes sleeping with a mask incredibly difficult, but would love this to work because he's not had a good night's sleep in 2 years. But my first thing is Cpap is the gold standard, and that's fabulous treatment, even though struggling. What would you say to that, Jörg?
Yes, I mean, I can't comment on an individual case. In that case, I would always refer back to the treating doctors who know the patient best. Yeah,
oh, of course.
But just to mention, and you mentioned this was with learning disability?
No, severe disability.
Oh, with severe disability. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there might be conditions as to why Cpap might not be so easy. Yeah. For example, if you require a carer to apply the mask. Yeah. And actually, the NHS had just this week put a call out for help with equipment and help with educational material to improve the provision of Cpap in these kind of cases. We're working with the British Sleep Society, the BTS, and the ARTP on this currently to improve and assist patients further. But then it needs to be said, there is to be it needs to be an individualized call, because sometimes, despite everyone's best effort, it's just not possible to sleep with a mask out of whatever reason. That's why I was asking, for example, learning disability is sometimes one of such reasons. And in that case, non-Cpap therapy might suddenly be the choice. Yeah, because if first-line therapy can't be delivered, then suddenly non-Cpap therapy, for which we now have emerging evidence from postural advice over mandibular advancement devices to maybe electrical stimulation, could offer alternative treatments to Cpap. And by now, we're not talking about no evidence any longer. We're now talking about the development of evidence from clinical trials. And then typically centers where you have experienced clinicians who could make that call could advise further.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm looking at another question here. You know, when you were saying, you know, it didn't resolve it in some of the cases, especially poorly, but surely using a mandibular device and the Tesla or the Zeus, whichever way it goes, you know, that would be something else to consider, wouldn't it?
Combination therapy, it's a very good idea, and again, there's hardly any knowledge around this, not with electrical stimulation, even even combination therapy of Cpap with mandibular advancement device. There are just really 2-3 trials out there who've ever tried this, because you can imagine if you bring the jaw forward with an MAD, you might actually lower the effective Cpap pressure, which might make it much more comfortable to use Cpap and therefore improves your compliance. Yeah. So combination therapy is something incredibly exciting. Now, here is my take on this. If you think of a chronic condition like diabetes, then when we discovered insulin, we never would have said we've got insulin, let's stop development. We don't need any further drug. Yeah, the development has gone on and is still going on. And by now we are talking with diabetes drugs about weight loss drugs, yeah, etc. Now in sleep apnea, we're just a bit later because only since the 1980s, Cpap has been invented. So it's a fairly late coming to the table in our specialty. Up to the 1980s, there were hardly any sleep labs around in this world. And so Cpap is great. And it is, in my opinion, the best treatment there is. However, take the insulin, yeah? The fact that we've got Cpap doesn't mean we should stop there. We will need to develop second-line therapy, third-line therapy, combination therapy. And the same is true in other chronic conditions. If you think hypertension, yeah, you would never say, I've got my calcium antagonist, we don't need beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, or diuretics, yeah? You would always be very, very grateful that you have other therapies and you can mix and choose regarding which patient suits best from which treatment. And we are now entering this exciting era in sleep medicine, in my opinion, for a clinical academic doing research in the field, an highly exciting time, but also for patients, hopefully a very rewarding time, because with the 21st century and technology, and Nigel will tell us much more about this if we leave him some time. With technology being high tech and suddenly condensing all that we had in a stimulator when we started 10, 15 years ago in a box like that, now in a tiny little gram package underneath your skin, yeah, this is exciting times. This is high tech, and we'll hear much more about this. And therefore, yes, combination therapy. I'm sure there will be options to combine this with Cpap, with MADs, maybe with posture. I don't know. Yeah, it's something where we obviously need to do more research to provide the evidence.
And one of the things I'm just thinking as we're talking about combination therapy is none of these combination therapies involve medication, which, I mean, obviously there are some illnesses that you have to have medication, but it's so good that such a serious condition as in obstructive sleep apnea and UARS for the symptoms can be managed without drugs and side effects. I mean, it's a mechanical obstruction, and therefore most of the treatments that are developed are around a mechanical solution, yeah, and therefore this is not drug therapy. But it becomes really scientific because there are developments in the area to take drugs and try to avoid that these muscles switch off at night. That's very early days, but we might hear more about it in the years to come. I've been reading about that the other day, and I didn't like the sound of the side effects.
It's incredible how you can target certain neurological pathways and keep certain functions turned on whilst you go to sleep. Incredible.
It is, yeah. It's a lot of there's quite a lot of questions coming in. I don't know if we'll manage them all live tonight. But some of them I think we will direct after Nigel's spoken, because they are the manufacturer of the device, so he'll be able to answer that. I think just a question is, do you think UARS, there might be some trials for UARS in the future yet? Clinical trials.
I'm sure there will be trials, and we are already running on trials with Tesla. I mentioned one that is coming to an end on our end. Nigel is starting with a collaboration with the NHS on the South Coast, another one very soon. Nigel, over to you.
Yes. Okay. Would you like to introduce yourself now, Joe? Just to save time, because
hi everyone. I'm just amazed at how active you are on the questions, and hopefully I'll answer a few of them while I go through, and I'll be going to be very, very quick, so there's more time for questions, which is the most important thing, I feel. So I'm Nigel Clarke. I'm CEO of a company called Morgan Innovation Technology, and it's a family company started by my parents 35 years ago to help people develop medical devices and get them to market. And we're trying to aim to impact 1.5 million lives by 2024 with the devices that we develop and manufacture. So we're a small company. We met Jörg and Prof Moxham maybe 10 years ago. I think he met my parents, and we've been working with him ever since and supporting him with Zeus. So just letting you know, Zeus is the device. Long story how we came up with that name, and we use the Tesla technology in the Zeus device. And I say we've been developing the technology for a number of years with Jörg. We've released it earlier this year, late last year, as a consumable product for snoring only, because to get it through another clinical, the device itself has to go through a clinical trial, not just the technology, and that is takes time and is also expensive. But I'll come on to it later. We're running a clinical trial in a couple of months, and I'll go into that a little bit more. Just very quickly, some of these are in the photos. Our initial prototypes were this very chunky white device with the electronics and Tesla technology in there. And then it was actually, this was the original consumable pad with conductive poppers and things. It was too heavy. It kept on falling off the chin. It worked when it did stay on the chin, but it wasn't practical and very expensive. So we finally got around to developing this Zeus device, and it's a silicon, medically tested technology, biocompatible consumable pads and things. So in this part here is the battery and all the clever Tesla technology and the stimulation settings. There are a couple of buttons here that you can adjust the settings. So I think there's 8 different levels of stimulation, and you set those yourself because people have different adherence levels to the stimulation. And then attached to the device is this consumable 5-layer Z pad, we call it, but it's a 5-layer conductive hydrogel pad that allows the stimulation to go from the device to your skin. And what you do is you attach the pad to the device, and then you simply attach this to underneath your chin here. I'll do a live demonstration. And as Jörg said, so it sits under the chin. You can then adjust this there's a light here, and you adjust it in the mirror at night, and it stimulates these 2 muscles to, in my layman's terms, not professor terms, just pull the tongue forward and open up the airways. So that's our Zeus device. It is being sold at the moment on the Hope to Sleep website. We can't make medical claims until we run a clinical trial with the device, which is happening this year. So that's why we've released it as a commercial device. We've done a huge amount of user testing and user trials with fantastic feedback on snoring, and there's huge inclinations that it does affect sleep apnea, as indicated also in the Tesla trials. So the roadmap for the device is we're starting a 50-person clinical trial in September, supported by the NIHR, which is an NHS funding body. We're running it out of Dorset County Hospital, who've come on as our partners for this trial, and it's for mild and moderate sleep apnea sufferers, which we think is the real target market that it will have the most effect on, the best effect on. And as the trial is working, there people are doing a full AHI testing at home on night 0. They're then going to wear a device for 7 nights, and it's either a device that works or doesn't work, and they in theory don't know if it works or doesn't work. So you set it up as normal, you get all the stimulation, you set the levels, and the device then actually goes to sleep for 20 minutes to allow you to fall asleep, and then it starts stimulating. And one of the devices will start stimulating as it should do, the other device won't. So they'll wear that for 7 nights. They then do another full AHI test on night 7, And then there were another device, which again is the opposite. So if they've worn one that worked, they'll wear a sham device for the second 7 nights, and they'll do a full AHI test on night 14 as well. They'll also be wearing a pulse oximeter for all 14 nights and filling out a daily questionnaire from themselves, and if they have a partner. And we're also developing an app for this trial that will track all the data of when they use it, what levels they use it for, and things like that. So we're hoping to publish these results first few months of next year, and then release and put it through all the medical certification, which takes several months with certification bodies here, and declare it as a medical device, say the first 6 months of next year, certainly, and it will become a medical device. And it's then the sales effort to get it into sleep clinics, get it into hospitals where it can be prescribed and things. But the initial sales will certainly be through, as we like to call them, friendlies, such as Jörg and Professor-Steier, and sleep clinics we know around the country. But then also we'll be still selling it directly through the likes of Hope to Sleep. And then in future, we've learned a huge amount. We've sold several hundred of these to date, and we've learned a huge amount from user feedback. So we will be hopefully coming out with future versions that are different sizes, so a bit more customizable, different colors as well. We know black doesn't suit everyone. We're bringing out an app as well, so it potentially can be controlled by the app. But the app will also help track sleep patterns and things like that. And the ideal situation is with bigger orders, more buying power, we can then get the price of everything down and decreased as we make it cheaper, because we're ordering more. So as I say, we're only a small company that's been working with Jörg for a long time. We've set up Zeus as a company in partnership with both King's College and Guy's and St Thomas, so we're all part of the same company running this. And yeah, there's a brief, very quick overview of the device, and yeah, welcome any more questions from anyone. That I see there's just lots and lots and lots of stuff coming through, and I will obviously, Kath can share my email. They've got a lot of answers in the Hope to Sleep charity. You can share my email and people can get in contact with me directly, and we can answer things as well if we run out of time. Kath, you're on mute.
There it is. Yeah, so there are lots and lots of questions. What obviously I've known you for quite some time now, because we have helped recruit people for you in the early days, and your passion as well. Yes, you're a manufacturer. Yes, you need to make money, like everybody does, but you are very, very passionate in helping people. And this is your credibility that we, all of us, have noticed at the charity. So some of the questions coming in, as Nigel has said, it is on the website. So some of the questions like, can it be used with a titanium tooth implant, are on that website. Do you want to quickly answer that there?
I personally don't know. I have been told the answer many times, and I can't remember if it's yes or no. I believe they can be used with tiny, and Jörg's left. I believe they can be. Yeah, they are. Yes. I believe there's answers to that on our website, but if not, people can email me, and our clinical in-house clinical lady will help answer those questions.
Yeah, if you could just give a link there, Natalie, somewhere for everybody to see onto the website, because we spent a lot of time, looking into there's a big list in red, before purchase of it, please look. And as we're saying at the moment, it is not for sleep apnea at this time. We would prefer people with sleep apnea who are on CPAP not to purchase, I'm sure.
Yes, simply because, the Tesla trial and the home Tesla trial and the other trials that Jörg mentioned earlier have proved that the technology will work with sleep apnea and is working with sleep apnea. Unfortunately, the way clinical trials and things work, we have to prove not just the technology, but the device itself that has the technology in works on sleep apnea. So we're very, very confident it will. We're very confident it's mild and moderate sleep apnea sufferers. But unfortunately, we can't make those claims. So we're being law-abiding citizens and things like that. And yes, selling it as a commercial snoring device, which amazingly is not a clinical condition, despite the impact it has on people.
Yeah. And this is where we stand as well, Nigel. We don't want anybody to purchase it and come off CPAP. You know, you're under a sleep clinic, and obviously,
yes,
it's very, very important to be guided and speak to your own sleep clinic if you are considering that. But it's not something that Nigel or Hope to Sleep are saying at this stage. You know, it's still in evolvement, isn't it, Nigel?
Yeah, absolutely. There's Mr. M or Mrs. I'm not too sure. M. Charles has asked a number of questions very quickly. There's two buttons you set it on, and when you start feeling the stimulation, you then turn it down one, so you don't feel the stimulation. The device then turns off for 20 minutes and then ramps up and starts stimulating while you're asleep. And you can't feel it while you're asleep, because that wouldn't be any use whatsoever. It's a good cure for snoring because you're not actually sleeping, but would make the device terrible. So you don't feel it while you're sleeping. It takes a couple of days to get used to it because it's something foreign on your face. But after that, and I've worn one myself, I was part of all the user trials, and so were most of my staff, and you get used to it after a few days. And also the same person, drop me an email and I'll put you in contact with the recruitment nurse at Dorset County Hospital if you want to be part of the trial. Absolutely. So please drop us a line if you want to be part of that.
Somebody's saying here we can get to Dorset Hospital easily. Is it Dorset?
Dorset County Hospital, yes.
County, yeah.
Carlos, yeah, somebody Carlos, yeah. So absolutely, drop me an email and I'll put you in contact with the recruitment nurse there. We're not recruiting. We're providing the devices. We're in the background. We don't know who's being recruited, where they are. It's very, very blind to us. It's a proper clinical trial. So.
But also followers, most of you I'm sure are already on our newsletter list, because obviously we will be part of this as well. Not doing the physical trials, but the helping on the panel. And if there is any opportunity for any more testing, we'll know about it and we'll let you know. But at the moment, it is there on the website. So certainly for snorers,
yeah.
Well, I was saying you've got nothing to lose. You have actually. You've got the price.
Yes. Yeah. But there's a couple of questions. Roger, unfortunately, no, you'll have to have a shave. It doesn't stick. Well, it does stick occasionally, but we recommend without a beard. Apologies. Anonymous attendee, been using it for a few weeks. If you've got any questions on using it, please email us. There's an email address on the website. We'll respond to you within a few hours, certainly a day or two. Also, Kath and the Hope to Sleep charity have got a lot of answers for that. Turkey neck, no idea if it works for turkey neck, but Kath sent me a review on the Hope to Sleep website last week. He believes it might work for turkey neck, but I'm not.
Have a look on the website.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Yeah, we do have a few views, and the lady mentioned turkey neck. Yeah, because I was telling you, wasn't I, Nigel?
Yeah, Alicia, they're on the Hope to Sleep website. Please go and see the prices and things like that. As I say, ideally, longer term, we're hoping to get the prices down, especially the consumable bit, but the device as well, and we'll be able to do that. The more successful this is, the lower we can get the price. But it's a new device. We've made it ourselves in small quantities and things. Yeah. So until we get the volume manufacturing that we can achieve, it's difficult.
I think yeah, one of the most important things, if you could answer before we finish, Nigel, is what type of people isn't it going to help?
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't help me because I snore because my nose is blocked all the time.
Yeah,
So
that's what I was thinking.
Stupidly played rugby as a child. But
you better do a sleep study on you then.
Yes, exactly. That's right. So I get the old-fashioned elbow.
Get you on Cpap.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So we're talking about this section.
This section here, as it says, it stimulates these muscles here. So it's, I think it and from what I understand, as I say, I'm not a professor or researcher, but the majority of people with snoring things, this is the reason they do snore and they do have problems, is because, and it's something 70, 80 odd percent, is the reason is the airways relax. And when the airways relax, which is why people snore more when they've had a few drinks, because muscles relax. It's when the muscles relax that then closes up the airway. So all we're doing is, and it doesn't continually stimulate, because like all muscles, it'll get used to it. So what it does is stimulates for a short time, then switches off, and then stimulates, and then switch. So it's on off all night, but you cannot feel it. So it's working through the skin. But there are a few websites, and there's a few places you can go and find out and test reasons why you snore. That's not my area of expertise. Unfortunately, Kath and Hope to Sleep are probably best to help direct you on that side of things, certainly on different reasons why you're not sleeping well.
Yeah, well, that's right, because, like we said, combination therapy, I've lost the question, but somebody just popped up something about the lower jaw. Is it going to help those with the lower jaw? Well, I would, if they have sleep apnea, I would be trying it on its own. If it didn't, I would be putting my mandibular device and seeing the difference then, and see how you go, and then perhaps a chin cushion or a chin strap. I'm really happy with my CPAP. It's a good job because I do need non-invasive ventilation anyway. But we know there are some people that would fare better. People who travel a lot. Somebody else mentioned, they go on flights a lot. Of course, it'd be much better to use something like that, or a mandibular device, wouldn't it, on a flight?
Absolutely, and CPAP is still the gold standard. I think it's certainly in the near mid future will always be the gold standard, but certainly for the mild and moderate, this is an alternative. Sleep apnea's got CPAP's got a big dropout rate, and it could be a combination, a couple of nights CPAP, this for a few nights and things like that.
Because often when people get diagnosed, even through the charity, and they ask these, but will this help? Will that help? Well, the thing is, if you get yourself on CPAP, which we know is the gold standard, and which we know in most cases will work, then you can look at trying other things as well. But the important thing is to get yourself treated so that you start to feel better and you can think better, and then you can search as well.
Absolutely,
that's how I look at it. But there's so many questions here. I don't know if we've got time to go through them all.
Very, very quick answer to Tate. The adhesive is medical grade adhesive, so it's make sure you put it on the right side. It's unbelievable how much testing we did with that. It's six months of testing on adhesives to make sure the bit on your chin was biocompatible and didn't irritate skin for 99% of people, but yet stayed on for 8-10 hours because it couldn't peel off. That was difficult. And then also it has to be sticky to the device, but not too sticky, so when you peel it off, it doesn't leave a gunk and things. Unbelievable what has to go into these things. It amazed me. I step back and I don't get involved in much of that and the company. It's a lot of clever engineers testing, but you'll be amazed at what testing's gone into this and how many things we've trialed and failed with. Hence the reason these things take time. So yes, and if you need data sheets, it's 3M material from the best adhesive supplier in the world. So
Well, I know that, you know, if I was in certain people's shoes and it was just obstructive sleep apnea, I would certainly want to be trying a non-invasive electrical stimulation before having something implanted. My personal opinion is that. Because you just take it off if you don't like it. It's sort of not stuck inside your body. But then maybe there's a scope for some people where if it does work, well, actually, they might go that step further then and look at some of the other devices Jörg was talking about. You know, but, you know, the non-invasive way, like Cpap as well, you know, is a lot better, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
I think someone said I'd have implants. Well, I would always try first without the implants. But then obviously, you know, go that step further.
You know, I believe the implants are $30,000, maybe. I'm not too sure, yeah. And I'm not no idea of the costing of the Nixo one. So it's not a cheap option. It's possibly a cheaper option. I'm going to sell my device here. Possibly a cheaper option to try this for a little bit before going down that. But
laughing at Bianca, she said, "Is that all?" She's changed her mind.
Yeah, that's
you know,
right.
There's obviously a big place for the implantable, you know, so they wouldn't be there. You know, but you know, I would myself. I would always try. It's like if there's a natural way to treat me, I will do that before putting drugs in there. And that's exactly the same for this, really. I'd always try non-invasive first, and if it didn't work, then look, you know, at other options. But I think what we've got so many questions. You're so popular here, Nigel. Some of these questions, yeah. I was going to say some of the. Go on.
I've just popped the email into the chat function.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you but so it's ZZZ at Zeus Sleep. ZeusSleep.co.uk, and that'll all come through to me and my colleagues, and certainly we can share all the information with the Dorset people and things like that. So
yeah, well, what Tim will be doing for us is these questions won't get lost, the remaining questions. So Tim, what we usually do is Tim will get hold of them, and then in a day or so, a couple of days maybe, he will send us the list. So we will answer what we can. We'll we'll ask Nigel and we'll ask Jörg any of the questions that need their input. So everybody on this webinar will actually be sent an email with the recording, if you want to watch it again or forward it on, and with the questions answered. So, because we don't think we're quite expecting as many.
Yes. I mean, I knew you had a loyal band of followers, Kath, but they're very active as well, aren't they? Yeah, so
very active. Yes, we all are. Yeah. So we thank you. I think. Oh yeah, we're still here. So
Bill, Bill, if Bill's still there, Zeus, the Professor-Joerg-Steier trial have been carried out with the Tesla technology, which is the bit in the Zeus device, but not with the Zeus device itself. He started the original Tesla trial was done with equipment that we provided him, and it was TENS pads wired to a device that was plugged into the wall, which we developed for him. And his latest at-home trial is being done with other technology that we provided him. That's, again, it's a portable TENS-like machine that we've adjusted and created the right stimulation levels and the function to stop-start. But so those are the two trials Jörg's doing. The only trial that's being conducted with the Zeus device itself is the one starting in September with Dorset. So hence the reason. So we've got for the clinical trials, we've got the technology from two trials, and then the final piece of the evidence will be actually using the device on patients, doing that. So
and Norma, you're asking about the email for info at Dorset Hospital. If you contact Nigel, just above your comment, zzz at zeussleep.co.uk, I tell you, you see, he really is passionate in helping everybody himself.
Catherine as well, side effects from Zeus. I mean, we have had one participant with a bit of skin irritation, so we suggested they stop it. Nobody's reported anything like sore jaw or sore tongue or anything like that to date. Yeah. And as I said, we've got 600 devices out there that have been used for the last few months, and all the trials we've done prior to that and the testing. So nothing. It didn't work on some people. It's not going to work on everyone. So in terms of side effects of jaw or irritations and sore tongues, nothing so far, touch wood.
Mandibular doesn't work for me, but it works for a lot of other people.
Yeah.
This is what I say, you're looking at the holistic approach, adding things bit by bit, see what helps you. And I just think, to sum up, Mandy Reynolds says, many thanks for this webinar. I'm looking forward to receiving your email with a link so you can watch it all again. That's lovely.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Mandy. So Tim will be busy in the background, and so for the next few days, he will hopefully get us a recording, which we'll send to you, and we will answer all these unanswered questions as well. But just give us a little bit of time, because I might have to contact Nigel for some of the answers, and some of the other answers, like somebody asked about central sleep apnea, I need to ask Jörg. So we want to give you the correct information. So thank you ever so much, Nigel, for giving up your time.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and to Merry Band of followers. Huge,
Yes, we have lovely people following. But we've heard about the device, and tonight you've made it real, let them see what some people have been trialing, because not everybody was able to. So, and it just gives us another option for the future. Who knows? This may be replace CPAP one day, who knows? None of us know.
Exactly. He's hoping.
It's more important that there are a big range of
absolutely, absolutely. The more that's coming out, there's more other things coming out as well that are working, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
There's enough people suffering to sustain hundreds of companies. We don't all need to be billionaires. So
no, we don't. We just all want. Well, that's what I mean about his attitude.
As long as we can help a few people, as long as we can help somebody sleep better, I'll sleep better at night.
Well, that's what our charity stands for as well. It's just lovely to know that just a few words, sometimes a few little tips, makes such a huge difference. So thank you ever so much, Nigel. He did have to leave us, but he did warn us. But he'll probably watch the end later because he gave us a fabulous talk as well. So do I just say bye-bye now then, Tim? Because I'm not used to being the panelist. Right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for supporting us like you always do with all these different webinars and all the other aspects of the charity. And like I said, for those of you on, you will be contacted in the next few days as soon as we've got that video and the questions answered. Okay. Take care, everybody. Thanks for coming. Bye.